Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show.
Primal. Adjective. 1. Relating to early stages in evolutionary development. Primeval. From the medieval 17th century Latin, primalis, primus, first. 2. Relating to or denoting the needs, fears, or behavior that are postulated, especially in Freudian theory, to form the origins of emotional life. Indomitable. Adjective. Incapable of being subdued. Impossible to defeat or discourage. These are all words that have been used to describe the subject of the next artist spotlight. The fantastic Frank Frazetta. Primal is exactly what you get when you look at Frank Frazetta's paintings. They are alive. All of his artwork attacks your vision with kinetic energy. Relentless, indomitable, and all-consuming. So, dear mortals, I beg you, if you value your sanity, if you treasure your senses, prepare your feeble mind for the barbaric visions of Frank Frazetta.
Ed, how bushy is your beard? Are you keeping it under control?
Oh, I just don't give a shit anymore. I'm just letting it grow out. I don't care.
Ed has
World's ending.
10 different forms of COVID in his beard, and they all look like Metro.
We're done. It's over. We had a good run. This will be the last. Aliens will find this podcast and
Be like,
make
whoa.
a weird religion out of it.
They're going to be like, a religion where everyone talks over each other and makes racist jokes.
Is everybody, isolated? Or is everyone there but me? Is there some Asian racist thing going on?
No. We're all on the phone to give the illusion that we're all isolated. But we're all in the same room, Ed.
I mean, I appreciate you going to this effort.
Look, we can't afford to get the China virus, okay? Everyone knows.
Hold on, Mr. President. I'm going to let you finish, but I want to introduce the show first and welcome our listeners to episode 284. I'm your host, Botter Milligan, and in true quarantine and isolation fashion, I got my co-host with me on the phone today. I'm talking about my right-hand man, Cesar Cordero.
Yes, hello.
The scarf seductress, Ashley Lanny Hoy, has chimed in as well.
God damn it.
And last but not least, The one-man art studio, Edman Danzar, a.k.a. Edbot 5000, is with us here today. And together we formed the Shortbox Podcast, a.k.a. your favorite podcast. As you can tell, I've been working on a bunch of intros. That's all I got, man.
That's the best you could do in the quarantine? In the quarantine?
Favorite podcast.
Yeah, really.
I thought, look, when I made that up, I was
Sitting here waiting on pins and needles, trying to figure out, all right, we're going to do some homework. We're going to put a lot of real effort into the show. And Botter's like, guys, I got a great way to toss to the show. I'm going to call us. Wait for it. I'm going to call us your favorite podcast. All right. No. Hold your applause. Me, Botter Milligan, saving the show.
No.
I got back problems from carrying you guys. So.
I said your favorite podcast. Like talking shit, kind of established.
It just sounds like you have Tourette's.
I like how even miles away, you guys can still find ways to shit on me. Thank you so much. My self-esteem needed that humbling. Okay, but for real, my self-esteem to the side, I want to address the listeners. Shortbox Nation, as you could probably tell from that intro alone, this is our Frank Frazetta Spotlight episode, the first Artist Spotlight episode of 2020 to be exact. We'll be spending the next hour talking about the master and godfather of sword and sorcery fantasy art, the legendary Frank Frazetta. If this is your first time tuning in and you're wondering what the hell is this maniac going on about, allow me to explain what you're about to get into. Our Artist Spotlight episodes are part of our quarterly series where we perform a concentrated, retrospective, deep dive into an artist from the comic book world who has made an important impact to the culture. Since launching this series in 2017, we've done spotlights on comic book icons like Jack Kirby, Kira Toriyama, Alex Ross, Bernie Wrightson, and a whole lot more. I highly recommend going back and listening to those episodes since they are readily available on your favorite podcast apps. And I personally think those are some of our best work. Today's Artist Spotlight is brought to you by our Shortbox patrons, the same group of listeners who helped pick our 3 recent Artist Spotlights, including our Will Eisner, George Perez, and Todd McFarlane episodes. Frank Frazetta won the votes from our True Believer tier patrons, beating out Mobius and Osamu Tezuka, respectively. So, a big thank you goes out to those patrons for voting and directly inspiring the episode you're listening to now. Granted, as most of you seasoned Shortbox listeners know, a conference call is not how we like to normally conduct our shows. But in consideration to safety, we figured this was the best way to get together to record today's episode and help you pass the time in your fortress of solitude. Nonetheless, if you're interested in participating in our next Artist Spotlight, our future episode polls, or just want access to more Shortbox content like bonus episodes and merchandise, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/theshortbox, and consider supporting the show as a Shortbox patron. Speaking of patrons, I'd like to welcome our new patrons who recently joined the roster. Big shout-outs. Yes, woo. Thank you, Steve. A big shout-out goes to Greg Parrish, a.k.a. Alan Fresh, a.k.a. one half of the music team here at the Shortbox. He listened to our Nerd Distancing episode and felt inclined to go ahead and back the show, support us on Patreon. So big shout-outs to Greg. Thank you so much, dude. Next up is someone near and dear to my heart. Blythe Brumleave is now a Shortbox patron as well. With no influence from me, for the record, by the way.
Lies.
Yeah.
Those are lies.
Baby, please, I just need $5 a month, baby. Come on. And last but not least, a big shout out to Tony A. Uppy, who recently leveled up
Nice.
and joined our True Believer tier. He was already a Shortbox patron, but said, fuck it, I'm going to level up and join the top tier. So shout outs to Greg, shout outs to Blythe, shout outs to Tony A. Uppy, all new Shortbox patrons joining.
I don't know if Tony actually said, fuck it.
Nah.
I hope he did.
He might have, and he probably said it in front of like his family. In true Shortbox fashion.
Oh, man. So for those shout-outs out of the way, I'm excited to start this Frank Frazetta episode. C, how you feeling about this, man? That intro, once again, you crafted an intro that I think, to me, captures the mood of the artist that we're talking about today. I mean, how did you go about creating that? How do you feel about it?
Well, honestly, man, I had kind of a tough time trying to make it, And, I think we both kind of talk about that sort of thing where we try to do something a little different. each of these artist spotlights, and Frank was a tough one because it's like, how do you quantify what is so? When people look at his art, they're usually speechless. So it's like, oh, hey, your job, by the way, is to try and quantify the unquantifiable. How do you quantify the feeling you get when you look at a Frazetta painting? And I still don't think I captured it, but if you enjoyed it, hey, even better.
Yeah, no, dude, I think we've gone on to talk about how when it comes to these intros, you've managed to avoid going for the low-hanging fruit or their most iconic work, and just really looking at the artist as a person and what they bring to the table holistically. So I think this one was another good example, man. Good work on you.
Thank you. And also characteristically not short boxy. We always go for the low-hanging fruit. So
the tastiest fruit.
It is.
Oh,
right.
Ashley, how you feeling about Frank Frazetta, Ashley?
I'm super excited. I am so pumped about this episode.
Cool.
I made a couple of inappropriate Italian jokes ahead of time, so those bases were covered.
I'm going to tell my grandpa all about it.
Oh shit!
Ashley, do you want to go ahead and just get your? I know you're gonna freaking name drop Frank Frazetta in some way. I mean, did you have dinner?
When did you hang out with Frank?
Yeah,
really.
You had coffee, you had brunch somewhere in Sarasota.
Way back in the day. No, I did. I met him.
Come on, Ashley.
Oh, God damn it!
No, I was in high school, so I didn't realize how cool it was. But
where did you meet him?
Yeah, you said high school.
He was at MegaCon.
Okay.
When I was in high school, I mean, I don't even remember when that was, 2000.
Mm-hmm.
He just had the booth set up, and he was just, hey, all these people that you meet at conventions, they're just hanging out. At least most of them, they're just chilling, and you just walk up and they're just acting like a normal person.
Did he call you over to is that the scarf? Is that the scarf seductress? Come on over.
God damn it.
But there are other accessories.
All right, I know.
Besides just scarves.
I miss you guys, okay? Jeez, I'm sorry. All right, I miss you guys. God.
Ashley, I have a serious question.
Mm-hmm.
When you were in his presence, did you smell I have to ask, what does God smell like? Like olive oil, oregano?
He did not let me get that close.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. You didn't touch that.
You didn't hang off his leg like a Conan painting?
Right.
Skulls?
Ed, that's the first thing I would have done.
Yeah.
If I would have known.
I'd have a chainmail bikini on, holding onto his cap.
Hey, Ed, can you go ahead and Photoshop me and C's face on them scantily clad women holding on to Conan's leg for this
Please, if there's anybody out there, somebody Photoshop.
Dude, that'd be so great.
Yeah, our faces on those lovely Frazetta girls.
Oh, yo, real quick. We haven't had a chance to talk about this, but speaking about fan art, shout outs and speaking about Tony Aopi too, but shout outs to Tony Aopi for that fantastic, no pun intended, but that fantastic 4-piece, man, that he did for us.
Yes. It's always nice to have that, and to have Botter ruin it by saying something very pithy about it.
He had me looking like a Dominican Rico Suave. I was feeling it, Mr. Fantastic. Ed, how you feeling about Frank Frazetta today?
Oh yeah, I just did most of my research this week since I have nothing else to do, and it's really cool. I learned a lot of new stuff that we'll probably go over during the course of the show. But it's been awesome revisiting his work, because I honestly haven't looked at it in a little bit. It's just it's cool to kind of revisit and be awed again. Like when I first saw his work.
Yeah. And I think it's safe to say the listeners, especially the patrons, are pretty excited about this, because when it came to the polls, I think Frank Frazetta definitely led by a significant margin. So I'm excited to go ahead and jump into it. So like we normally do, man, I want to go ahead and understand what was everyone's first conscious exposure to Frank Frazetta's artwork. I'll go ahead and start off with C. What was your first exposure, C?
So I have to do kind of a two-part answer where the first conscious exposure is tied to the first unconscious, and everybody here will probably understand my reference. When I was little, I saw the movie poster for Army of Darkness, where Bruce Campbell is kind of sitting there in a very Frazetta pose with the handgun, the hand chainsaw, and it's was it Back to Time Surrounded by Evil, Low on Gas? And and I was like, this looks so awesome and funny and weird, and this is crazy. And I didn't know, but when I looked at a Conan book that I had, it made me feel the same way, just scared. Like I was in 5th grade, and I looked and I was like, was this the same guy? You know, like I didn't know the difference when I was a little kid. I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy's awesome. He drew, you know, this goofy dude fighting, you know, pretend little skeletons. And then also he drew this Conan cover. And for a little bit, I didn't know. I was a dumb little boy. And it's a shocker to everybody. And then when I, got older and I realized that, Frank Frazetta was the tits, I never look back. Like the guy has influenced probably my favorite artist, Bernie Wrightson, in the most direct way possible. So yeah, I'd say the Conan covers.
Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox Store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show.
That stuff was everywhere, because I remember going to the flea. Like, my best memories are not being a little kid at the comic shop, because we didn't have that kind of money, so it was always at the flea market. And
you're poor.
Just like cardboard boxes of comics, and like walls with just like Frazetta posters all over them. And I just remember thinking that they were awesome. And then, later, like really getting into comics, seeing, realizing it was Frazetta and being like, oh yeah, I'm totally into that guy. I've been into that guy since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
What about you, Ed?
Yeah, like I said, it's probably the same as C. It's like it was probably at Chamberlain's, or one of the iterations of Chamberlain's over the years, that seeing all those Conan covers, but not really knowing like how awesome this art was, especially compared to a lot of that really terrible 70s stuff that was out there. And that at the time, like, just really popped, and it's just that his like work with doing the Conan paperback covers. That's what kind of where I first unconsciously saw him, but didn't really know who he was until way later.
Mm-hmm.
I think I shared something pretty similar too. I was telling C the other day, I think my first, unconsciously, I've been, in direct contact with Frazetta's artwork just from his record album cover work. I mean, like the Molly Hatchet.
Molly
stuff.
Hatchet?
Yeah, especially like the Molly Hatchet
I
flirt.
didn't know you grew up on Molly Hatchet.
Well, I mean, I've been collecting, records and vinyls for a long time. So, I mean, I've been in, I've just dug through like just random boxes. And I've always come across that Flirt and Disaster cover. And even to this day, I still run into it and I still pause every time I, come across it. But I didn't know it was Frazetta back then. Of course, in my research, I'm learning about all of these album covers that he's done. And I'm like, man, I know I've seen all of this. But even maybe earlier than that, in my dad's comic book collection, when I used to dig through his comic collection, he had like these Conans that had his covers, but specifically the few issues of Eerie and Vampirella that he did have in the collection. I remember that those covers was like, holy moly, like, whoa, this is so dark and murky, and like just it gave me like just the creeps when I used to like come across them. So I don't think it was until much later when I recognize his signature that I was able to go back and say, okay, he's always kind of been in my life as a comic book collector, but it's just been unconscious for a long time now. So,
fun fact: when Bauder would go under the bed in between the mattresses to find those comic books that belonged to his father, those old Eries and Vampirellas, his pants are still tight.
Oh,
fun fact.
Nothing like
I'm just kidding, guys. We're having fun here.
nothing like a nostalgia boner. Thanks, C.
Oh God.
the disgust in Ashley's voice would fool first-time listeners into thinking this is her first episode with us.
Ashley's like, I've gone, close to a month without you fucking heathens. Now I've got to take this. All right. So, look, I want to take a step back and do our new listeners justice, especially those that probably aren't as familiar with Frank Frazetta's body of work and just really his career. What we like to do is kind of do the homework for you listeners. That way, you guys can kind of sit back and enjoy episodes like these. So, I want to go through a very high-level career milestone of his. Just do a quick rundown of his career, and then, of course, Ashley, Ed, and C, you guys can kind of chime in if any interesting facts or anything I might have missed. So, when it comes to Frank Frazetta, he was born in Brooklyn, New York City, 1928. At the age of about 8, he attended the Brooklyn Academy of Fine Arts. It was under the tutelage of an Italian fine artist by the name of Michele Falanga. I believe that is his name. He was such a big believer and supporter of young Frank Frazetta's skills that I think he even had dreams of sending him off to Europe to further his studies. But unfortunately, Falanga had died in 1944, which forced the school to be closed down and also forced Frank to find work to earn a living. It wasn't until about 1944 when Frank Frazetta was about 16 that he started drawing comic books, such as westerns, fantasy, and even funny animal comics, usually under the pseudonym.
Just started to track back a little bit. He started in the academy at like age 6 or 7 or something. So he was like a prodigy,
still pretty young, right?
An art prodigy.
Yeah. Yeah, Cesar gave me the homework of watching the Painting with Fire documentary, and it was pretty cool to see some of the his earliest artwork, and how all of his teachers were pretty impressed at such a young age. But where was I? Oh yeah, so around 16 he starts getting to comic books. He's doing funny animal comics, usually under the pseudonym of Fritz. His first comic book work was inking the 8-page story Snowman in a one-shot by Tally Ho Comics. Kind of getting into the 50s, he was working on EC Comics. He was working on National Comics, especially their superhero work on Shining Knight. He was working for Avon and a bunch of other companies in the 1950s. So kind of a similar path as many comic book artists around this time was doing, which was just a lot of freelance work for various publishers and comic strips of the sort.
Yeah, can I say something?
Yeah, come on, Steve.
That I was going to say, he kind of came into the industry around the time, at least as far as comics are concerned, when things were sucking pretty bad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because he wanted to do like comic strips, which was a lot more lucrative because of syndication and stuff. And books were like trash shops, but actually doing like a strip, like a Little Abner or Garfield, that type of thing in the newspaper was where that was like the goal.
Yeah. Yep. He had, I know he had tried to get work as far as like EC was concerned, but at the same time that he started working with them is around the time that, the whole comic book witch hunts were going on, and
Seduction of the Innocent.
Right. And it's what led to his breakout was doing that painting of Ringo Starr for Mad Magazine. So, or Black, basically, which was
and then like, and I don't know how kind of jumping around here, but like, and all his issues with working with comics is why his comic work is, overshadowed by like his paintings and things like that, is because he was, despite I think what Neil Adams would say, he was an artist that wanted to keep his original artwork. Yeah. And that was like not a thing they did back then. It's either just like incinerated it or just threw it in a warehouse. But he would take like half of his pay, just basically cut my pay in half, but I want to keep my artwork. He's like, why should I bust my ass and make these great drawings if we're just going to, reproduce it and then toss the original? So there's like a thing there where, like, of his work, he wasn't putting 100% into it, even though it was still, stellar, and he was making it for himself. But that was a big bone of contention with him and working with publishers before he broke out as like doing movie posters and paintings and things.
Yeah, right. and I think that speaks a lot to his ingenuity, and just being business savvy. Take half my print or half the upfront pay, but and especially some of the things that I'll mention later when it comes to like some of his paintings that did sell, to make a much bigger buck down the line by owning, the equivalent of like when it comes to music, like owning your masters. I think he was really smart in ownership.
And it's like, and I'm not sure. And that's definitely a reason to do it, but there's also, I think there was an attachment there. Like I know a lot of artists, they'll, get attached to some of their pieces, and the fact that it was just being, put in a warehouse or just being destroyed just did not sit right with him too. But yeah, there was like a monetary reason, but I think there was like a philosophical reason as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to go back to some of, just kind of go back to the 1950s to Ed's point and Cesar's point. Some of his notable bodies of work during that period of his life included Buck Roger covers for Famous Funnies, the Little Abner comic strip of Al Cap, which he did a lot of ghost artwork. So, I mean, he wasn't getting the credit per se, but, I think everyone in the industry kind of knew, well, it's Frank Frazetta doing the pencils. He also worked on his own strip, Johnny Comet. He also assisted on Dan Barry's The Flash Gordon daily strip. To Cesar's point and Ed's point as well, it was during like the mid 1950s. So 1954, we had the Seduction of the Innocent, kind of that war on comic books and whatnot. So for the most part, between that and the fact that just the comic book landscape had changed. I mean, it was around this time that a lot of publishers was looking at Frazetta's artwork and saying, hey, this is kind of antiquated. This isn't really popular anymore. This is kind of outdated. So he did kind of take a break from comic books to focus more so on commercial production. But he did return.
Yeah,
Good.
I'm sorry, just to jump back. Did you guys read anything about his the Thunder King of the Congo? That was kind of like this hidden lore that basically that's kind of what that was like, kind of the nail in the coffin, and all of the things just fell into place, like the Seduction of the Innocent. But the fact that this was going to be his this is his only like comic he's done like completely, like inking, writing, doing scripting, everything. Like this was he did one issue of this Thunder King of the Congo, and they basically just wanted him to do a kind of like a Tarzan ripoff, because a lot of comics at those times were just ripoffs of, Buck Rogers, Tarzan, Conan, established things, established properties, just to kind of make a quick dollar. Yeah. So he didn't really want to do that. So I don't know if you've seen any of this stuff. It's pretty crazy. So he took kind of like that Tarzan story, but he made it this like a World War II soldier crash landed on like kind of this land type of thing where he's like, he gets out and he's like fighting dinosaurs and like snake demons and crazy. So he went like full mental on the whole Tarzan archetype with added his own kind of fantasy twist to it. And he did 3 stories for one comic. And then the editors and publisher wanted him to tone it down and make it more of like just a generic ripoff, because they were trying to sell these rights to make, like serials, like with like Buster Crabbe was just doing like all these Tarzan roles at the time. So they wanted him to tone it down so it basically sell it and license it out without any, it's like, without any issues about the content in the book. So that was kind of like, that kind of fell into place with the Seduction of the Innocent, but that's a pretty crazy story. And that's like his only comic he did like cover to cover before he went to greener pastures.
That's a good point. I'm going to fast forward to the 60s, like when he started returning to comic books and working with like Harvey Kurtzman on the parody strip of Little Annie Fanny in Playboy magazine. And I think C had already mentioned it was around 1964 when he did that painting of Ringo Starr for Mad Magazine that in the parody in the ad that it helped capture the attention of United Artists Studio, which had approached him to do a movie poster for What's New Pussycat. And I think it was then when he got paid from that, he realized, well, I just made, my yearly salary in one afternoon.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I think from there, it was pretty much a wrap when it came to, full-time kind of comic book work. Because after that, that's when he started producing paintings for, all of those paperback editions of Conan, Tarzan, John Carpenter. And I think that's when he really solidified, his reputation as kind of like, in my own words, the grandfather of sword and sorcery collection, or sword and sorcery fantasy art.
I think it's, as I say, I think it's also important to mention that at the time, this is a time when people were, the movie poster industry was a business in itself. Like Photoshop, it's not like you could take like, 2 or 3 hunky actors and then Photoshop them together and then put the title of the movie above them and say, this is what the movie, like it. Nowadays, that's kind of what we get as far as posters are concerned. Like back in the day, you had actual like artists being commissioned to draw out sometimes photorealistic imagery with little to no reference based on what the movie was about. And, Frank not only broke into that, but was able to elevate that to an art form.
Yeah, that's well said. Let me see, just keeping it going. So around this time, like I said, he was getting a lot of success for his painted trade paperback covers for these books. And I think in some instances, he was selling millions of copies to the point where folks were just buying the books just because the covers were so damn badass, right?
There's like, and I think, I don't know if C chime in on this, but he basically created that look of Conan, how we see Conan today. I think that he's should be attributed to that.
Yeah, that's
from his. Okay, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to let you finish your thought. Uncharacteristically.
Hold on. Okay, I'm finished.
Okay. Ed's right. That's how good Frazetta was. Is that Conan already had kind of a look to him, and he was so good that he did his take on it, and the collective sort of vision, or I guess the interpretation of what everyone kind of experienced as far as that was concerned, changed completely just because he knocked it out the park. Like it was like, oh well, now that's what Conan looks like. Everybody's like, yeah, that's what he looks like. It's he doesn't have that. As I say, if you look at the older,
he wasn't like Fabio, like a blonde, like he had scars and like looks like he's seen some shit. It wasn't like a male model.
Yeah, if you
look
at the older,
like a Harlequin romance cover.
The older Conan illustrations have a sort of like short-haired, almost like greaser haircut, wearing like a Roman centurion's like frock with a sword, and then Frazetta
an armband with a pack of cigarettes in them.
Yeah, pretty much. Frazetta
to go back what Potter was saying, that the paintings were selling the books. I mean, the Death Adder painting, they saw that and they basically got people to. I think 3 or 4 novels were written on Death Adder just based on the painting. That was not connected to anything. It was just, oh, this is cool. Write some shit about this. Yeah. It's like 80s toys. It's like, okay, we got these toys. Make a story,
Right. A lot of publishers were buying Frazetta's artwork and then afterwards coming to their writers and saying, write short stories based off of this so we can put it on a book, because sometimes the books, they would sell just based off the covers alone. That's incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, it was around this time that he really leaned into, painting or oil painting, as well as, movie posters. I think we've already mentioned that, but also book jackets. He was doing calendars, but occasionally, well, not occasionally, but he was still utilizing his skills with ink and pencil, especially in the comic book world, because it was around this time that he was doing, working on the black and white stories and Warren Publishing, Creepy. He was doing Eries. He was doing the Vampirellas around the same time, too. So, I mean, he had, like, the commercial game on lockdown, but he was still, dabbling in comic books, too, as well.
I think the Eries stuff was more like a creative outlet, because it was, I remember reading something where it wasn't, like, a good paying gig, but they kind of gave him free reign, like creative freedom.
Yeah.
So that, means a lot.
Yeah. I'm going to fast forward to the 1980s, because that's around the same time that he created his gallery, Frazetta's Fantasy Corner in Pennsylvania. I mean, it was a building that housed basically like his own art museum that displayed both his own work and a separate gallery for other artists that he's worked with or just had really big respect for. Fast forward to 1983 is when he worked with animated movie producer Rolf Bakshi on the feature Fire and Ice, which Cesar assigned me as homework. I ended up watching. That shit was actually pretty fun. It was also the Fire and Ice movie deal was actually the first movie deal offered to him that gave Frank Frazetta full creative control. A lot of movie companies were coming to him prior and having him, work on illustrations and concept art, but that was kind of outside of that was kind of the limit. They weren't going to let him have, full creative control or more than just, drawing the poster or character design.
Yeah,
so this was
he got full creative control and zero money to make that movie.
Yeah,
which is like a lot of Bakshi people's very shoestrings.
I was about to say that's par for the course with Ralph Bakshi.
I know you even put something like, I think Botter put something on the Instagram stories where it's like, Cesar gave me this homework assignment and he had the Fire and Ice playing. I replied to him, it's like getting homework over spring break. That is not a great movie.
Yeah.
I mean, you can appreciate the design and stuff, but you can tell it's like, you can see it's cheap, despite its best efforts, and some of the cool Frazetta stuff in the opening credits, where it's just his drawings. And then when it's the cartoon, it's
well, the technology definitely, I don't think, was there to fully render, Frazetta's, artwork to the big screen, in my opinion.
Well, it's not just that; it's just like, it's like seeing when you have a big fantasy quest or a big science fiction thing, and there's no money in it, and there's like 3 people in the whole thing. It's like, okay, you can tell there's, even though it wouldn't look visually technology-wise, but having the last ones to actually add more characters and more animation, and just even have a better person doing like the background paintings, like the old school cartoons had. And so it's just if you go in the business with Bakshi, it's not a lucrative production.
Yeah.
But that said, there's a lot of artwork attached to it, credibility wise, right? So you got guys like Frank Frazetta, to say the least, right? Frank Frazetta and Ralph Bakshi, titans in their own right, working together to make this film. But then at the same time, Botter, I'm going to throw a little Marvel at you. Roy Thomas wrote the screenplay for Fire and Ice, and I highly recommend it. I do recommend Fire and Ice. Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway, I think, wrote the screenplay for Fire and Ice. And if I'm also not mistaken, if you guys know about Thomas Kincaid, he did the backgrounds to a lot of the scenes. Right? Thomas Kincaid.
I hate it even more. I hate it even more. I hate it even more now.
He gets credibility for dropping the fucking backgrounds on that. And Peter Chung from Eon Flux was a layout artist.
What?
So
that's cool. Yeah, Thomas Kincaid, that's not going to sell that for me.
Oh, wait. Peter Chung's cool? What? Because he's cool. He gets a pass?
Ashley.
He gets a pass.
That's part of it. That's not the only reason. It doesn't.
No.
Ashley,
you're showing your cards, Ed.
Have you ever watched Fire and Ice, Ashley?
Who, me?
No,
Ashley.
Ashley.
Oh, no, I haven't.
Don't watch it.
It's good. Don't let
Watch
Ed
the trailer.
It was fun.
Thomas Kincaid, he painted light.
You can't tell You can't tell that any more than 2 people worked on this.
Look, speaking about paintings, I do want to. So I mean, that was 1983.
They can't all be home runs, guys. I'm sorry, they can't all be home runs.
So that was 1983 for the animated movie of Fire and Ice. And then really, I think for the most part, he just kind of transitioned into just staying busy on the commercial side. I've got a list of just album covers that he's done for, various groups. Molly Hatchet. What else do I got? Dust, Nazareth, Wolf Mother. I mean, is there any other ones I'm missing? I'm sure I'm missing a few, but
as far as its ties to music are concerned, Botter, if I may chime in, if there are any Danzig fans out there, the skull the skull that's Danzig's logo, his big kind of claim to fame, was commissioned by Glenn Danzig. He asked Frazetta to do it for him.
Do you remember Danzig's comic book line? Back in the 90s?
It's still out, Verotic, and I actually just
Is it still out?
Oh yeah. He actually, all right, without getting too far into the weeds.
Cesar's a stakeholder. He's got stocks in it.
Because I could talk about Danzig forever. Danzig actually commissioned Frazetta for a logo for his band because he was in Sam Hain at the same time, and he's like, "Could you, design some sort of like a emblem or a mascot or something I can get behind?" Because at the time, Frazetta, the internet didn't exist, so if you were into Frazetta, you were already into like fringy sci-fi fantasy shit. So he does it, and it's so iconic that you can see it slapped on a shirt, and you just be like, man, like, God, it's a freaking demon skull with like horns, and people immediately associate it with Danzig, and that's a job well done. Like, that's the one thing Frank was amazing at, is that if anything, like, he put the work in, and you knew you were going to get something good. Like, it didn't matter what he was drawing. He would always outdo the competition. Mm-hmm. And I think Botter, I don't know if he mentioned it before, Frazetta wasn't like an amazing, like, he never really said like, yes, I've been a master at pencils and ink. I'm a master at painting. It was more kind of like he was like, you know what? I never tried painting before. Let me do this. And was good at it.
Yeah. Effortlessly, yeah.
Yeah, he's a prodigy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like, just was like, I never tried sculpting. And he was good at it.
Well, even when he had the issues, the thyroid issues, and he had the strokes, and he basically taught himself to paint with his opposite hand.
Yeah, that shit was crazy.
To a very high level, equal, some would argue. And that's madness.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't use this hand anymore. I'm just going to do it with my left hand now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could list the amount of people that have done that in their career, like artists that have had that ends artist's career. Like, you can't draw with that hand anymore. You could count on one hand the amount of people that has actually survived that sort of thing, and Frank Frazetta's there.
Yeah,
and just kind of wrap up this little career milestone, this trip down career milestone lane. I think for the later parts of the 90s, well into the 2000s, I think he really kind of just focused on working with his family on the business side of things, so just kind of selling prints, running the museum. I think he was still doing like commercial work. But I know that, as he got into retirement age, I think he just kind of focused more so on convention trips and just selling some of the artwork he did have via his museum. One in particular that kind of caught my attention was in 2009, the first Conan painting that he even decided to put up for sale. Because I read somewhere that he kept a really close grip on the Conan paintings, especially the original ones. He didn't want to part ways with those whatsoever. But the first one that he did put up to sell was purchased for like $1.5 million in 2009.
Yeah, it's Conan the Destroyer.
Yeah. And then of course, as you guys may know already, and Ed kind of alluded to, he was dealing with a variety of health problems, including that thyroid condition. The stroke debilitated his right drawing arm, and then he, unfortunately and eventually passed away in May 2010 due to a stroke. But when you consider his legacy, even until this day, and the impact it had, in 2019, just last year. That fantasy painting, the one from 1969, Egyptian Queen, which some say directly inspired George Lucas in the slave Leia costume. sold for a world record $5.4 million. And the record being, it is the most expensive piece of original comic book art ever sold at a public auction. The record prior to that was another one of his paintings. It was Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer #6 from 1990, and that one, sold for $1.8 million. So, even in his passing, his artwork still, warrants such a high level of respect and a price tag too. So,
isn't that a perfect metaphor though? Like, if you're the best, then the only person you can compete with is yourself.
If you're one of his kids, would you even pick up a pencil? Cut your hands off?
Oh. Forget it.
Can you imagine being in that shadow? Oh,
yeah.
So I want to hear about, that's kind of the end of my diatribe when it comes to his, career milestone. Like I said, we try to do the homework for you guys. I know there's probably a lot more that I might have missed, but I want to kind of just stick to the high points. I want to turn it over to you guys and hear about any new or interesting things that you guys might have learned during your research. And if you want to name any of the material, whether it's a documentary, an article, or video, feel free to. Ed, I want to hear from you first.
Well, the main things, and I kind of addressed them earlier, was that Thunder King of the Congo drama, and even like his stuff with his difficulty in working with publishers, because he's very much like a, I'm going to do it my way no matter what type of guy. But just the fact that I think he has to be one of the earliest artists to basically want to keep those original arts in a medium that was considered, a disposable art form. And that he really fought for that, even took pay cuts. And that's a lot of stuff I didn't know about that. Cause like I said, his comic career is so overshadowed by his paintings, which, makes sense. Cause like his comic career is very short in comparison.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's some of his struggles, and just going back and seeing a lot of his early stuff before he kind of found his own style, where you can kind of see the Hal Foster, Alex Raymond, Al Williamson, the Jack Davis kind of influences. He's kind of working it out, and then he's like his career just skyrockets once he starts doing posters and paintings. You can, he's developed his own signature style, and anyone who draws on that's like a direct, that's, you're going to see if anyone, paints in the style, draws in that style, that's a Frazetta,
Yeah.
He's one of those artists, which is just, I'm just lost at words now. But he's one of those people that's just such an influence and such a, a genre pioneer that everything will go back. His influence will be seen for, generations, I think.
That's fair. I wanted to chime in with some of these little interesting tidbits I had found. I think C had already kind of beat me to the punch of this one, but those Death Dealer paintings, which I'm sure anyone listening right now, when you Google Death Dealer Frazetta, maybe you'll have the same kind of instance that happened to me. As soon as I saw the image, I was like, I've seen this everywhere. I have seen this everywhere, and that's kind of the case for a lot of his artwork. Especially like the Conan, the Destroyer, the Conqueror, the Barbarian paintings. I've seen them everywhere. I didn't associate Frazetta with it. But to Cesar's point that he brought up earlier, those Death Dealer paintings were so popular. I'm talking just like the paintings themselves were so popular that fans and publishers created, multi-volume novels based on this character that even Frazetta.
And I believe Roddick did a Death Dealer comic with Simon Bisley doing it.
They did. They did. Yeah.
That's cool.
They did that, and I think they also did Jaguar God.
Yes. Bisley did that too, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Botter. That's it's funny how many metalheads owe a lot of their T-shirts and their imagery. It's super metal, dude. Like, I know Ronnie James Dio wanted to buy one of the Conan paintings, and Frazetta. Dude, how metal is this? Ronnie James Dio told Frazetta, he's like, "I'd like your painting." And Frazetta just goes, "No." Like the freaking. Oh,
Holy
man.
Driver was the shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yo, and I read somewhere, and to Cesar's point about Frazetta being so nonchalant, especially when it just came to his skills and just mastery of fucking ink and pen as well as painting, he's gone on record to say, when it came to the album covers he did, that he didn't really listen to the music at all.
Right.
And when it came to the
books,
I
mean, I think with the album covers, a lot of them are just
paintings
he has already done,
right. That's right.
And they just licensed them out.
Well, I mean, still,
I don't think they were done specifically outside of his stuff with Danzig. I don't know how much of it was, specifically for an album, or is just, hey, can we use this piece? Here's some money, type of thing. He
was also saying to the same effect when it came to the artwork that he did for the trade paperbacks of like Conan and Tarzan, etc. That he didn't. He was like, I don't really read these. I just kind of do the artwork and enough people like them that I make a living, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of the people that buy these books probably don't read them neither. So I thought that was kind of a funny statement. Another interesting thing.
He's that bitter about the comic industry, so I'm not reading this shit.
Another interesting thing I got to bring up is this Mothman painting. And this Mothman paint, and for anyone listening, any of these painting names that we mentioned, I definitely recommend just doing a quick Google and Frazetta Mothman or something like that. But he did this Mothman painting that made it to the cover of High Times number 57. And it helped popularize John Keel's The Mothman Prophecies. It was a book in 1975, and it was kind of a collection of these several kind of eyewitnesses of this man-sized winged creature with glowing red eyes, mainly in the Point Pleasant, West Virginia area. So it was, this dude John Keel made this book about, this Mothman, etc. And eventually a 12-foot tall Mothman statue was unveiled in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and it was based on Frazetta's rendering rather than like the eyewitness accounts, because the eyewitness accounts is vastly different than what Frazetta ended up doing. So
yeah, this is more badass.
Oh, 100%, 100. And the last thing I'll bring up.
If Frazetta did a Bigfoot, he'd be.
Oh, absolutely. That'd be the new standard. Yeah, that'd be the new standard. And the last thing I'll mention, I'll turn it over to C for any interesting tidbits. But I thought it was so cool to come across these photos of Clint Eastwood, Sylvester Stallone, George Lucas, like Clint Eastwood, Sylvester Stallone being like, the quote unquote kind of like man's man, fanboy.
Yeah, they're going to his house.
Yeah, like
because he wasn't going anywhere for nobody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. That's another badass move. So you come to my house, bitch.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get on a plane for you.
So it's like all of these, man's man, and folks like innovators like George Lucas, like just being fanboys to Frank Frazetta, who once again I'll reiterate was just very nonchalant, very humble, maybe even. So I thought some of those photos, just seeing like Clint Eastwood holding a painting of Frank Frazetta or Sylvester Stallone at his gallery and things like that, is definitely speaks to how wide like his range, and his impacts and his influences and people that he inspired. C, what about you, man? You found out anything interesting or new in your research?
Something I did. So this is kind of, I think all of us here can kind of agree with this, is that it's not really so much anything new with Frazetta, because he's kind of been at least I can only speak for me, is that he's been part of my life for a long time. So I've got a lot of his work kind of just based on some of the shit that I'm already into, because I like Conan and I like Vampirella and I like all this stuff. But something new that I found out that I guess I didn't know before was that the Maasai warrior painting he did for his wife for an anniversary gift, and he had he didn't like how the face looked, and he just scratched it out like with a knife or something. Like it was just like, hey, I don't like this anymore, Ellie. I'm going to do you another one. And she's like, oh, my God. Like, she's like, what are you doing, Frank? And he's like, I'm going to do another one for you, Ellie. Hold on. Don't worry. And cook the lasagna.
Stupid. What?
No, that's not how he sounds at all. But he did it. Like, he scratched. Like, he literally went scratch, scratch, scratch. And then repainted it all.
Left-handed, right?
Yeah, he had already had the stroke, and he's like, I could do it, and he redoes it better than before.
Yeah.
And it hung in their house for a little while, and then they sold it. And then he recreated it again because he liked how much he just enjoyed that painting so much. He's like, I kind of want it back. So, he recreates it, and it hangs in the museum to this day.
Dude,
I need another ebony god to hang out in the house.
Right.
Ain't that guy?
I'll go ahead and
Right.
I want to piggyback off that because to Cesar's point, a lot of his redos are even like it's mind-boggling that he was able to take it up a notch. And the one that kind of comes to mind is Conan the Destroyer, which is one of his most iconic paintings.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Is a reprint.
That's the power of pasta, my friends.
That one is a repaint of Conan the Buccaneer, and the reason why he decided to repaint Conan the Buccaneer, which is already absolutely stunning and true Frank Frazetta way, is because he felt that Conan the Buccaneer, it's an image of Conan like strangling some a minion or something by hand, and he's got a bunch of other creatures and whatnot around him with weapons. He felt that Conan was like out of his league. He was like, well, it's kind of unfair that Conan's barehanded, so let me repaint this painting and give Conan axe weapons in his hand, like an axe in one hand, a sword in the other. And it's like just that small reason would give you enough man, that's a different level of passion and thinking.
Guys, I've been eating nothing but pasta and shoving my fingernails in chicken marsala to try and get some of that Frazetta juice for my drawings to be better. I literally have been rubbing marinara in my eyes.
Yeah, we got to talk to Sarah. We got to check up on C. This isolation's getting to him.
This is no, Botter. This is going to work. I'm going to be as good as Frazetta. Hark, heed my words.
Ashley, what did you find in your research? Anything worth noting?
I've just learned so much right now. This is so awesome. Because I was always like real familiar with his work, but not so much him. But I do like that he had a cool grandma.
Yes.
Do you see that? His grandma was like, yeah, here, draw on this. You don't have anything to draw on here? Draw on some toilet paper. Like she just started
that's so valuable nowadays.
Oh, exactly.
His work on a piece of toilet paper, that would be...
Well, mainly because of where we're at now, toilet paper is pretty much valuable all around.
Yeah, thanks for explaining the joke.
Timely.
I'm just saying, I'm here for you, Ed. I like to explain things.
Let's explain all our jokes. That way, that makes it funnier.
And it makes it funnier when you do that. So much garlic bread in my pants right now.
Oh, goodness gracious. I got to check on my friends. So let's go ahead and shift gears and talk about his actual work and like the technique that specifically resonates with you. Ashley, what is it about Frank Frazetta's artwork and the elements and the composition, et cetera, that speak to you?
So, okay, the thing about Frank Frazetta is I love stylized art, but the thing with him is that he is just taking like these foundations of art and he's not just like building on them, but he's like excelling at it. And it reminds me of like the Renaissance painters, but with this amazing fantasy to it. And I was thinking about like Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man.
Yep.
And how I feel like he recreated it for modern times and like made this this ideal man for like fantasy culture pretty much. But he just the way that he paints, it really is amazing. And just that he was a prodigy, like starting out when he was like a super little kid, like I just feel like he's like a modern master, perfect example of the word. Like, when was the Renaissance? Like
1500s.
1500s. Yeah. I mean, I feel like 500, 600 years later, people are going to be looking back at what he did with the same sort of admiration for how far he pushed fantasy art.
Yeah, and the crazy thing too, I really noticed till I started looking close, is how like didn't use a lot of paint, because a lot of his pieces you can still see textures of the masonite, So it's just very thin layers. But if you look at it as glancing, you think this is, especially with all the darks he uses and how much black and how much harsh shadows he uses, you'd think there'd be a lot more paint on the actual canvas. But it's surprisingly a lot of thin layers. And to go back to where he can, fix his stuff easier, having those thin layers of paint are a lot easier to scrape off when they're, when it's that, that thin layer of paint. So that was kind of interesting. I didn't even notice that till I saw some up close pieces where you can still see the canvas texture or the masonite texture, whatever he was painting on.
I wanted to chime in and say, I think he has a perfect balance of anatomy as well as design. Like, I was watching this video of this artist kind of breaking down his artwork and whatnot, and he kind of zoomed in on one character's kind of skull, and he said, you look at this, and from an artist perspective, you have to ask, what is this little bump right here by his forehead, and what is this underneath his eye? And he started drawing the human skull, and he's like, this is what Frazetta was just working off of, is this anatomy, but he managed to incorporate such a stylized design approach to it that it perfectly kind of married both aspects of it for this incredible product in the end. See, I wanted to get your perspective, man. As far as like some of the artistic elements that we talked about, and feel free to include any of your own thoughts on this. But what elements, whether personal or artistically, do you think helped separate him from his peers and contemporaries?
Oh. This is the probably biggest thing that separates Frazetta from all of his peers / contemporaries. The fact that he was fucking ripped enough to use his own body as reference.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we talk about how good looking this guy was?
Dude.
As reference for his own artwork.
Yeah.
Mr. GQ.
He could just be like,
a good looking dude.
Dude, look at Conan the Adventurer. Look at that painting and tell me that the blue-eyed freaking devil with the square-cut mane holding the sword isn't Frazetta. It's him.
Yeah, and the thing with like Frazetta's like, characters, I mean, they were muscular, but they weren't like bodybuilder big where you couldn't move. They were ripped, but like kind of slender, like someone who could, survive these, this whatever lizard man they're killing or whatever witch or wizard they're cutting the head off, in that scenario. But they were really grounded in, even though he said he didn't use too many references outside of himself. That's pretty. Yeah. He was in good shape. He was Hollywood good looks. He was a good looking dude.
Get Ralph Bakshi over there with his shirt off. Nobody wants to see that.
God. 400 pounds.
a big
maybe
sweaty,
for one of the trolls.
Yeah, no, just forget it, I mean, there's that, and the fact that no other of his contemporaries was looked at by the New York Giants at the time to play baseball.
Oh yeah, I saw a picture of him in uniform.
He was being looked at in high school. So he was good enough to play pro ball. Decided to say, hey, forget that. I mean, it's kind of now we're talking about music a little bit, but it's kind of the same story with Prince. Prince was good enough to get a scholarship with pro basketball and just pursued art instead because that's what he was meant to do, Same with Frazetta, man. I mean, he could have freaking been the next, Babe Ruth as far as baseball was concerned, but decided to go and be to dominate in the art arena and still maintain his fitness, Yeah.
And just to go back to the art, like another thing too is like I was reading a lot about, like especially his composition, which you see is, he uses like a lot of, like we're looking at his fantasy work, they call like a triangular composition. So you have the main figures and they usually form a triangle and it's very centered, like as far as design, as far as the layout of the paintings. And usually the figures have all the detail, but then everything else around it has almost like a haze to it, or it's not fully detailed. So it's, he said it was kind of like where you can use your imagination, but to me, it kind of makes those detailed figures pop out of the canvas more, where you have Ed, the trees and swamps. Yeah.
I was going to say, Ed, did you, I think that he was into photography, right?
Yeah. So it's like an aperture.
Yeah.
Like a soft focus or out of focus aperture setting and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So, but that's really cool. Cause like I said, it's a lot of times you see, And I think those makes his pieces stand out, because a lot of times when you take in a painting class or something, it's like a lot of times they say, don't put things directly in the center of the piece, it won't work. But he makes it work because of the, the focus and like what it's for. And you can even see, like, even though artistically they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum, you can see like pretty much all of Mignola's covers kind of follow that same triangular centered, design with like Hellboy and then like a face of whoever he's fighting. And then like, whatever cathedral he's standing on, it's like a triangular design in the middle.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also add that. And go ahead, Ashley. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say he influenced everybody. I just looking at his artwork kind of got me. I just kind of went down this Google search of like all my favorite illustrators, and like Ashley Wood and Phil Hale. I was just looking up their influences, and of course like Ashley Wood was idolizes Frazetta, and like Phil Hale.
Everything of his is out of focus though.
Yeah,
just took the out of focus thing where everything is.
And then Phil Hale was like, "Oh yeah, Frazetta was my first love." So
we can see like Boris Vallejo,
Mm-hmm.
Brothers, and there's stuff like Boris and stuff. Especially, it's like it's good, but his stuff looks very like it's coated in plastic. Like it's super shiny, super muscular guys, like really oiled up, ready to go. But they don't have that same. It's the same themes and stuff, but man, it's Frazetta stuff. I think it's so much more striking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll add to your list of contemporary comic book artists. One that definitely came to mind for me was like James Robinson, and how he approaches like covers and things like that. I think there's definitely a tie there.
And there's Mike Hoffman too, he's pretty much just like a Frazetta clone, I guess. He even signs his name like Frazetta, so he almost pays too much tribute to him, thematically and stylistically. But yeah, his influence is everywhere.
And I know, like World of Warcraft, a lot of their art team and things like that, they definitely note Frank Frazetta's artwork as big inspiration to creating World of Warcraft, which makes sense considering Frazetta's influence on the world of sword and sorcery and things like that. I wanted to also add that I think my favorite aspect of Frazetta's artwork, and Ed, I think you might have touched on this in your comments, is the settings. Like a lot of his Conan settings, specifically, like he just captures that mood of being in a dungeon. And none of us have been in, but when you look at his artwork, like I'm instantly transported to like a very damp, dark, murky, just really kind of scary setting.
Kind of like the Shortbox Studios.
Yeah.
God damn, that alley-oop was great. Thank you, Dr. J.
Very, very high table and that low couch.
Oh,
me and Ashley have to sit on.
You see, guys, I said that because Botter's house is like a dungeon.
Yes, we got it. Thank you.
It's very moldy and dank. It's like a dungeon.
Oh, man.
See, that's what makes it funny.
The new place is better.
Well, yeah. I mean, Blythe pretty much has to live there too. That's why. It can't smell like socks and cheese anymore.
All I got to do is hit this end call and it'll be a wrap for you.
Remember that vine growing out of the toilet? Oh, that was crazy.
All right.
But look at any of Frazetta's paintings. That's what it looked like recing at Botter's house every week. We'd have to fight like we fought big
minus
snakes.
The puma.
Yeah,
minus
no.
Was there? Oh.
Hey, look.
Yeah.
Look,
I was fighting that vine in the bathroom.
Dude, even
you guys don't remember when Botter was sitting there in a thong and a bikini, like on the couch?
Whoa. See, that was a bonus episode. Okay, jeez. Look, even the
Patreon only, dude.
Hey, look.
I'm not saying I didn't like it. I'm not saying I didn't like it.
Even the deaf dealer wouldn't go inside the old studio.
Well, that was weird when Ed came on a horse as the deaf dealer. That was very odd.
Oh, awesome. That's my Sunday formal Sunday attire.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we were to kind of go at a high level and whatnot, what would be your opinion on his impact on comic books and the art form, and why is Frank Frazetta so important? Ed, I'll look to you for the first go.
Well, I'm going to use the term again, but he's like I said, a genre pioneer. I think his impact on comics. I think his impact is more on just, fantasy art in general and just poster art, fantasy art, illustration. I think his comic stuff, while excellent, he didn't get, just due to bad timing and difficult people he worked with, and him still kind of finding his feet as an artist. I think his biggest influence is, sci-fi fantasy art in general. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just transcends, went from paperback novels to, like I said, posters, museum art to album covers. His pieces just have been in every place artwork can go, essentially. So I think that's his biggest, like his design, his ink. I think just his, just like the longevity of his career, and the fact that he kind of did it on his own terms, which mm-hmm. is really inspirational as an artist, where it's like, I never seeked the galleries. They came to me. Like these, famous people, they came to me. I didn't go to them. I didn't have to ask anybody for anything. I kind of made my own path, made my own rules, and that's awesome.
Yeah, that's fair. Well said. Ashley, what do you think?
Mm-hmm. I think if you take this big tent of just, illustration, fantasy art, comics, he's like the top of it. I think he's like the greatest fantasy artist we've ever had. So it'd be hard to find somebody in comics, illustration, fantasy art that hasn't been influenced by him. He just, I don't know. He's just like the godfather of it all.
Yeah. See, what about you? What word you got for it?
I mean, so as far as like you're talking about, like his influence on comics, you got to understand who he was around and who he hung out with, and the time, place that it's like, oh yeah, the influence of like. It's like Moses and God talking to each other, that sort of thing. Like he was like chums, not like, oh yeah, I work with this guy. Like legit good buddies with Al Williamson, Rick Crinkle, all these guys, so much so that they all hung out with each other. I mean, he's already off the bat, he's good friends with Al Williamson, another heavy hitter as far as comics are concerned. He was friends with Ralph Bakshi, arguably the king of animation as far as his X-rated and animated was Ralph Bakshi's,
he can be like the pioneer of like adult animation,
right.
For sure.
So like he's like basically walked amongst the best there is and has called them friends proudly. And all of the offspring creatively of Frank Frazetta ended up becoming masters themselves in the comic book industry. We're talking people that were directly influenced by Frank Frazetta and ended up meeting him. Bernie Wrightson, Bruce Timm. I mean, and Al Williamson also kind of counts too. All these guys that, Wally Wood for sure. They worked together with EC. Jesus, Forey Ackerman too. I say Forey Ackerman.
Mm-hmm.
God, count. I mean, even Ray Bradbury. People that, weren't even in the same lane as him, like, famous science fiction author, he had influenced them in some way. So like, if he's like, if the comic book industry is a ginormous, tumultuous sea, he's not a rock that somebody threw in and made ripples. He's a damn asteroid that killed the dinosaurs into the sea, and everybody felt his presence wherever he went.
I was waiting for the mic drop sound, but well said, C. Damn.
Drop your phone.
I think I did like 3 times already.
And I think Ed kind of brought it up, but for me, the biggest kind of lesson was that his comic book art is definitely overshadowed, I believe, by a lot of his commercial art, especially like the artwork he did for a lot of the Conan books and all the other trade paperbacks. But what I get out of his legacy for comic books is that he's kind of in the same, for me, in the same bucket as a Neil Adams. because, like we were mentioning, when comic books were getting attacked by seduction of the innocent and things like that, and the Comics Code Authority, and all that work kind of dried up. I don't think it was uncommon for a lot of comic book artists who had dreams of making the shift from comic book art and using comic books as a springboard to do more fine art, illustration, commercial work. Here we have a gentleman, Frank Frazetta, who not only was able to make the transition, but became wildly popular. I was talking to C about, his intro and how he managed to kind of encapsulate the mood when it comes to a Frank Frazetta painting. And I think, it's better said using Ashley's word that, he redefined a genre. And I think that's what it is when it comes to Frank Frazetta, is that he's got one of the most, iconic legacies that it probably serves as inspiration for a lot of comic book artists to reach that level. There isn't one thing that I think any of us can really point to for Frank Frazetta that would do it justice. We really have to point at his impact across multiple genres, not just sword and sorcery, but think about what he probably did for trade paperback books. He probably influenced a bunch of companies to really take a look at their artwork that they were putting on these books in hopes of selling, just like he was doing for them.
There's a lot of. I think the word you're looking for, Botter, is cross pollination, because everything that he did just ended up getting into it, like a lot of people listen. I think, Ed, you can attest to this, and Ashley, you seem pretty metal as fuck. The idea of like listening to a song and then like feeling a certain way and imagining certain things, and you could say that some of those images you wouldn't have in your head.
Well said.
Except but for the grace of Frank Frazetta.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You throw on some Manowar, put on a loincloth.
Oh, dude.
Sword.
I'll listen to fucking Heaven and Hell. And I'll hear Dio's voice, but I'll see Frazetta's images.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll go ahead and add one more thing about the comic book side of the house, because, we spent a lot of time, justifiably so, talking about his paintings and how amazing those were and the impacts they had. But I'm sure we've all probably had time to look at some of his black and white ink sketches. But I definitely want the listeners to also consider going down that rabbit hole of, Google images of his black and white ink sketches. Because even those alone, I think just the way that he was, inking and shading his own work, and especially some of the lines that he was using in some of these sketches, like it's so kinetic. There's so much movement, and it seems that he's got a knack for picking out, regardless of what he was painting or drawing, he managed to isolate that one moment in this story in his head. Because I think he even has said before, my paintings have a beginning. You could look at them and there's a beginning, middle, and end. And I feel like, those words are definitely true. You could look at any one of his art and he just seems to pinpoint the perfect moment of action, of just like the climax for any story. You don't even have to know, to the point of like Death Dealer, that painting. You don't know anything about it, but like you just look at it and you're like, yeah, there's a whole story here. He just managed to encapsulate this whole story. And he makes me think of like Mark Silvestri, who I'm, a huge fan of.
Oh, yeah.
You look at Mark Silvestri's black and whites, and you could see that influence from, Frank Frazetta, where just his black and white images alone and the way he's drawing these characters and the lines he's using, like there's energy to it. There's movement and action to it, so.
Hey, Ashley, I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think it's fair to say that Frazetta drew and painted and inked and sculpted has a large body of work made for dudes by a dude. And
yeah, very macho.
Sure. And I don't mean that like in a sort of like toxic way. I mean that like, in the very honest way. What do you think? Like, you are one, of course, a female, and on top of that, an artist. Like, what is it about Frazetta's work that's what speaks to you as someone of a member of the fairer sex? And what would you say to somebody who's a girl that is like never heard of Frazetta before?
So, what's funny is I never thought about that, because you think about just how like how anatomically correct thing, like he was just so good at what he did. I never thought about like, you know, it was made for men. His women though, like, you know, they've got the thighs, so a lot of them look like they don't need rescuing.
Okay. So I'm glad you made that point, and I 100% agree with you. So I was going to say, so how would you describe a Frazetta girl to someone?
So besides the powerful thighs,
Little clothing,
yeah, and the clothing never even. But you know, what's funny is like,
well,
I'll look
same
at
thing could be said about the men too. There's not much on
true.
the dudes, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've been to the comic shop and seen terrible artwork of Vampirella, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Or like Red Sonja, and it just, you look at it and you're like, okay, well that stupid triangle, you know, armor bikini is not going to do anything. But then you see it on his artwork and you don't care because it just looks so real. You're like, yeah, sure, like she could still save the day.
Yeah.
And the fact too that Frazetta had lead female characters too, so it wasn't just all, you know, scantily clad ladies kind of grasping it as the ankles, you know, like damsels in distress type of things. He had some, you know, either whether wizards or, you know, warrior women. He had some powerful women as well, and I don't think his work there's a sensuality to it, but it's not explicit.
Right. Like, there's not. I was going to say. I was trying to basically say everything that Ashley said, in the fact that Frazetta's paintings don't seem to exploit either men or women. I think Frazetta had because he was an athlete and he was into fitness. I think he had a very, very strong understanding of how the human body worked and what healthy muscles look like. And something even if you don't lift weights, you could look at a Frazetta girl and see, okay, these muscles are larger on her body. That doesn't just happen. That comes from either a lifetime of like kicking heads in, or
running from orcs,
squatting with an axe in your hand, about to deliver a death-dealing cleave to some person or a monster or a lizard. And I think it's evident. I think that's something for everyone that can enjoy. Same with guys too. Like it's just crazy how much of a command he had over the knowledge of the human body.
Yeah, it's like an idealized form of a male and a female.
Right.
So I never thought of it as being made for, you know, male eyes.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not cheesecake. It's not like sexually provocative. You know, it's kind of like looking at like you brought up earlier, Ashley, like a Renaissance painting with all kinds of dicks and dudes hanging out naked. You know, you don't really.
You guys don't get turned on by Michelangelo's paintings? Me neither. We're having fun.
But there's a certain level of art where it transcends that kind of thinking, you know, where it's not, you know, you're not flipping through a Playboy or, you know, a Tijuana Bible or something like that. You know, this is art. This transcends, you know, whatever either hang-ups you have or whatever, you know, addictions you may have on the human form.
What about some of your favorite like bodies of work by him? And if you wanted to add any, like if you had to recommend reading or just kind of viewing for interested fans, what would you select, Ashley?
So I mean, my favorite painting of his is the Huntress one. You guys know which one I'm talking about, with like the chick with the two saber-toothed tigers?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is my favorite. And unfortunately, I found out there's a statue of it.
Get it?
Captain Boomerang, make room.
I know. It's sold out, so I'm going to have to get it on eBay, but we'll see when that government check comes in, we'll see how I'm doing. But I love his like his creepy and eerie covers, like especially like the, you know, cryptozoology stuff. I mean, as far as like reading, I don't know, like I'm all about like don't read, just go on Google and just
Don't read,
image
kid.
search.
Pretty
Yeah, just
stupid.
go down rabbit holes image searching because he's got
Yeah.
so much stuff. And it was, that's how I did most of my research, which, wasn't the best because I was just looking at pictures, but I just spent like an hour just Google searching, just looking at everything.
It almost feels like trading cards in a way, right? Where it's like there's not one thing. It's like, oh, well, do you have Frank Frazetta? Have you guys seen Frank Frazetta, the Huntress? Oh no, I haven't. What about Conan, the usurper and things like that? It feels and to your point, we're only talking about images, but the amount of time that you could just spend looking at one image, it kind of feels like you've spent time reading through a comic book of his art. Like the fact that he's able to make such an impression on you, especially like actually same here. I went through just a rabbit hole of Google image searches, but the impression that he was able to make just from like these static images was phenomenal. See, what about you, man? What are some of your favorite bodies of work by him, or any recommended homework for people?
I mean, it's hard to choose, dude. I would say when I first started out, like getting into his shit, the original like Conan covers were probably my favorite. But I think now my favorite painting that he's ever done is the self-portrait. Yeah. Where he's just kind of looking, when he's just looking at you, and it's just like, God, that, of course you look like that, of course, like that's, yeah, like he looks like Elvis and Clint Eastwood mixed together, and he's just sitting there peering at you, and the colors he uses to make the images is just, if you just look at that picture of a self-portrait, you can see the shadows he makes of his hair strands on his forehead there, and they're like weird light purple and gray mixed together. Just so bizarre, the choices, but it haunts me. Like it's just so like I feel like he's looking inside like my soul. So that's probably my favorite. Yes, it absolutely does. You could swear like it's like you see the hair moving and like, oh man,
the eyes follow you around the room.
Yeah, and they
like a Scooby-Doo penny.
Well, no, it makes me do push-ups. He's like, tells me to do push-ups.
10 more push-ups, you bajagaloop.
Yeah, you stupid gabagool. I'm going to pour the lasagna in your eye.
Okay,
look at this guy.
The Italian Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
Ed, same question to you.
Oh, man. If I had to choose, I probably, just for my own personal aesthetics, I really like his horror stuff, like the creepy stuff, I thought was really good because that's more plain than like swords and sorcery per se. I like both, but he's one of those guys that I would, because he had such a long and varied career, I would kind of look at look at some of his comic work and just to kind of see his growth and the direction he went. But if I had to choose one thing, I'd probably his work on like eerie and creepy.
Okay. I got 2 or 3 I'd highly recommend. Is the cover he did for Robert E. Howard's Conan the Usurper. That's the one where like it's got Conan chained up. All you see is like Conan
with the snake.
Yeah, dude. Like, oh man. And Ashley's selection, Huntress, made me remember that one of the points I wanted to bring up about him is not only can he draw, like just kind of like this ideal version of man and woman, but his animals, like his artwork on just like creatures and animals is just as striking. I'm looking at this King Kong book cover that he did, and he's, wrestling this giant snake, but they all got like this primal, just like larger than life, just appeal to them. That I got to point out. And the other one too is another Conan cover. It's Conan Rogues in the House. And it's like, and it's got, Conan fucking leg locking this, whatever, it's like this ape looking kind of creature dude. But the thing about this cover is that anytime that Frank Frazetta uses color, I think it's always done very smartly and very limited. Because I mean, if you look at a majority of his artwork, I think he dabbles in very earth tone palettes. So your grays, your browns, your gray, blacks, etc. But when you look at paintings like Rogues in the House, or like the Egyptian Princess, where they've got this one color that pops. I think it's it makes me kind of want to get into the mind of his to find out, why did he choose to decide to go for like this one time to really use color. But yeah, between that and then the last one I'll mention is that fucking that Mothman cover for High Times magazine is stellar.
Man, you and High Times.
It just, I feel like it's such a funny story, but it speaks to like Frank Frazetta's like just legacy of like he can take it to the next level. Frank Frazetta is so good. He's really like, yo, Mr. Steal your property. You let Frank Frazetta do the artwork for your.
That's not what you saw. This is what you saw.
That, and I don't think we spent enough time talking about like some of his work on sci-fi stuff too. I mean, between like the Buck Rogers stuff, the weird fantasy sci-fi comics he was doing for Eerie.
If you got, I was gonna say, we keep mentioning Renaissance painters, and there's something that I don't know if any of us said this whole time we've been talking, but like the connection that all those Renaissance guys all had is that they all got commissioned by the church to do religious iconography and works of art based off of different kinds of books from the Bible. Frazetta's, he shares in that same lineage, being Italian and being commissioned to do work from already existing books as well. They just happen to be science fiction books of and fantasy books, where guys get cleaved in half, and it's just strange, man. And to be fair, he did do religious paintings. You could look at, there's like 2 pictures he did of Jesus, which is strange, because you're like, oh God, the guy that did Conan can capture the savagery of that world where there's a ginormous snake and he has to kill him. But also,
this is what Jesus?
Yeah, he did 2 pictures of Jesus that are like really weird and haunting and eerie in the fact that he can capture that sort of weird religious transcendence,
Jesus fighting
very
a
well.
Snake. That's cool.
Right, yeah. He's wearing nothing.
Part of the course.
So I guess not to be sacrilegious, but very Jewish.
So my last question, kind of wrapping this up for this artist spotlight, is if you guys had
just real quick, can you believe that he didn't do the poster for Conan?
You beat me.
Yeah.
Yes.
How bullshit is that?
Blunder.
That's bullshit.
Huge blunder. And you know what? Whoever they got to commission to do that art looks like they were trying to bite Frazetta, and it's like, why not just get the real deal?
This was prime for. I mean, he's available. Yeah. I'm sure he would have done it.
Yeah, talk about it.
That was ridiculous.
So I think that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I think we're at a good stopping point as far as Frank Frazetta. As always, hopefully, our listeners, for those that didn't know anything about Frazetta going into this episode, hopefully, we've convinced you guys to give him a look. Check out his artwork. Check out any of the things that we mentioned. I do want to add something to my recommendation, only because this was actually homework that I really did enjoy. But the documentary, Cesar, that you recommended me, the Frank Frazetta Painting with Fire. It's about an hour and a half, but a fantastic documentary, and especially opportunity to hear about Frazetta's life and works and impacts in his own words too. He's a big part of this documentary. I definitely highly recommend that.
He was such a sweet guy, man.
Dude,
I mean, he loved his wife. You looked at his wife. She's a Frazetta girl. She's a knockout back in the day, and stayed with her, had kids. I mean, like, dude lived the life. I don't know, man. He was a class act.
Yeah, he was. So, and you definitely get that from watching this documentary. So check out Painting with Fire. And then I know when it comes to, I know Dark Horse was releasing a series of Conan books called the Frazetta cover series or something like that. So they were reprinting all these Conan stories with Frank Frazetta covers. So there's like a collected trade. So that's something I'd recommend too. If you're listening and you're a big Frank Frazetta fan and you feel that we might have missed something, or you want to chime in, add a interesting story, tidbit, or just your overall thoughts on Frank Frazetta and his impacts in your life and artwork, etc., feel free to shoot us an email at theshortboxjacks@gmail.com. We want to hear from you when it comes to your thoughts on Frank Frazetta. And then last question for you guys, man. Just kind of looking ahead to the future. We do these artist spotlight episodes every quarter as best as we can. Who would you nominate for our next spotlight? And who am I going to add to the polls for the patrons to vote on? Ashley, who you got up next? Who you want to nominate?
I'm going to throw out Laura Martin. So not really like your typical choice, but she's been around for a long time and she has done so much stuff, even if it's, just, as a colorist, she just has like this huge body of work.
That's not a bad idea. Maybe one of these future episodes we can see how the patrons feel about maybe doing a spotlight on a famous inker or colorist.
Yeah, just switch it up a little bit.
I like it. C, who are you going to nominate?
Still going to stick to my boy, Jean-Gerard Mobius.
All right. Ed, who you got up next?
I'll do someone new. I'm going to put Simon Bisley in the hat. Never, yeah.
That's a good one.
I've been talking about Frazetta this whole time.
Which, by the way, that documentary, Painting with Fire, a bunch of comic book artists classics. Beasley shows up in that documentary. Joe Jusko, Dave Stevens. So yeah, I'll go ahead and throw in. I'll nominate Bill Everett, creator of my favorite Widow's Peak Speedo rocking member of Aquatic Royalty, Namor. He was also the co-creator for Daredevil, Stan Lee. So I'll throw in Bill Everett. Cool. All right. Well, dang, man, this was a really good ass episode. I love our artist spotlights, especially when it focuses on, really any artist, really. But it always gives me an opportunity, an excuse to just go absolutely 110% on focusing on one artist. I feel like every episode I end up leaving and just really cherishing a new just icon. So, guys, I miss you guys. I appreciate you guys hopping on this call and making this episode happen. Any last minute comments, shout outs, shameless plugs, words for the Short Box Nation you guys want to share? See?
Yeah, actually, shout out is not for me. It's for my buddy Matt. Matt Stinson, who has his company Bold City Longsword. They aren't doing much European martial arts as of late because of social distancing. Mm-hmm. However, that has not stopped Matt from giving lessons online. And on top of that, recording his very first episode of a podcast.
What?
The podcast is called Swords in Stereo.
Markers in love.
Right, exactly.
No.
So it's called Swords in Stereo.
Yeah. I saw the
first episode is out.
For that. Nice.
And I think he put it on Podbean, so we're gonna have to show him the way of Buzzsprout. But yeah, I listened to it. It's fun. It's a good little podcast. If you don't know anything about historic European martial arts, that is a good place to start.
Okay. Big shout out to Mad Attack, man. We miss you. Ashley, any last minute comments, words, shout outs, all that?
No, not really anything new going on for me, actually.
Have you been staying busy, Ashley? What you been watching and reading?
I've been working. Dog daycare has been deemed essential, so I am still going to work every day.
Damn,
yeah.
Wow.
So, and then teaching on Zoom, and then still doing my kids' book illustration. So I'm very, very happy to be working. Also a little bit jealous that, everybody's got time to, get caught up on
Trust
stuff.
me.
But
as someone who's unemployed, it's not as great as you think it would be.
yeah.
Ed, you're taking commissions though, right?
Oh yeah, everything. I don't care. Whatever. I'll draw the weirdest, pervious shit you need. I don't care. I need money.
What about?
Ed, you already have Potter's money. You don't need to try and pander to him with those weird requests.
I will take it. All the stuff I've never done in the past, I will have a more receptive ear nowadays.
And
that brony commission you turned down?
Yeah.
I would take 20 of those brony commissions. So yeah,
First off, Ashley, I'm really mad that you kind of blew me up like that. I told you about the brony commission in confidence.
The funny thing is, I don't know if it was a show. I was in the same show Ashley was at. It was like this crazy, biker looking guy that asked for it.
It was Tampa Comic Con. Yeah. Tampa Bay Comic Con.
Right? Yeah, Tampa Bay. So yeah, we were all staying with Kate, right? Is that the one?
Yeah.
So yeah, this guy full on, Hulk Hogan, Fu Manchu, leathery skin, vest, had colors on, just slid up like sideways, like, "Hey man, where's your brownie stuff?" I was like, "Whoa, man!" I was like, nothing really. So yeah, that was interesting. I was like, you never know who's going to ask for a brownie question.
Ed,
that's the moral of the story.
Ed, where can people reach you to make a request for a commission?
Oh, if you just go on Instagram at Bot5000, slide into those DMs and we'll talk.
Okay, because I got an idea to finally get that James Franco in the fashion of Jeff Lemire for Ashley print. I think we.
Yeah. Oh.
Since I won't be able to.
Jeff Lemire style figure for Ashley.
Since I won't be able to meet Jeff Lemire in person to ask him for this James Franco print for Ashley, I think you'll be the next best thing.
I think I'm as good in watercolor as he is, so I'm pretty confident I can replicate Jeff Lemire.
Leaps and bounds over it.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and chime in to wrap us up and say, thank you to the listeners for tuning in these last few weeks. This marks our 6th straight episode since March, and we recently hit a big milestone of over 7,500 podcast downloads last week. And that would not be possible, of course, without the listeners or the Shortbox patrons who help keep us motivated and help us keep the lights on here at the Shortbox studio. Like C said, this is kind of like a dungeon, so we need all the help we can.
Oh, God.
We'll probably be taking a break next week. Like I said, we've been going strong for 6 weeks. So we might take a break next week unless I can pull a few more tricks out of my sleeve. But regardless, this is a great time to get caught up on some of our past episodes, especially those artist spotlight ones that I mentioned in the beginning. Those are available on your favorite podcast app. You can find our Will Eisner episode, for example, Dropsy Avenue, which was episode 273, pretty easily if you like the format of this one. And lastly, consider becoming a Shortbox patron if you want to participate in the next artist spotlight poll or listen to unreleased bonus episodes and even get merch. We've got tiers for all levels of support and budgets. You can find out more on patreon.com/theshortbox. I'll go ahead and plug in our social media as well, primarily our Instagram. You can find us at TheShortboxJacks. Ed's always posting really cool articles, news, updates, and pictures and whatnot. So stay up to date with what we got going on there. And yeah, man, stay safe, stay healthy, look out for one another. Ed, C, and Ashley, thank you guys so much for carrying me on this episode per the normal. Can't wait to have you guys back here in the studio for us to record an episode in our usual fashion of being in person and whatnot and together. So yeah, man. With that being said, I want to go and thank the listeners one more time, and hopefully we'll catch you guys in a week or two. All right. Until then, thank you. Bye.
Yo, what happened to peace? Peace.